Hi, I'm Taryn Deaton. I'm a principal with Red Strategies, and I'm here today with my colleague and friend, Holly Richardson, who's a director with Red, and we are pleased that you have joined us for an episode of our Threading It Together training series, where we focus on kind of our best tips and tricks as it relates to nonprofit fundraising. And today we're really focused on closing out year-end campaigns successfully and effectively. And specifically, we're going to talk about impact reports and annual reports and what's the difference. So obviously, it's that time of year where we start to think about how do we report back to our donors about the good work that they have helped make possible this last year. And so, either through a campaign or throughout the fiscal year. So Holly, kind of what's your best thinking on, impact reports and annual reports and the differences between those and all that good stuff?
Yeah, definitely. So it very much used to be the case that producing an annual report was a must-do activity for nonprofits, that every single nonprofit out there, it was an expectation that you would put together an annual report that was a full accounting of everything you had done over the past year, all of the money that had come through of your organization, all of your supporters, and that this was an expectation of the sector. But we're really starting to see that as people's media habits have shifted and digital has become a much larger function in all of our lives, we're starting to see organizations rethink and challenge this notion that they have to do an annual report. And we're starting to see a lot more creative and sort of alternative thinking about what communication asset organizations put together in order to report back to their donors. So for today, we are excited to offer you 3 distinct differences between annual reports and impact reports so that your organization can join in this trend of making an informed decision about what's the right communication asset for you, because maybe it's an annual report, maybe it's something else. So Taryn, start us off. What's one of the key big differences between annual reports and impact reports?
Well, I think the biggest difference is the presence of financial information. In an annual report, that is expected. In an impact report, not so much. So an annual report, you would normally have, some at least a high level overview of your revenue and your expenses for the year. Generally, you would have a listing of your donors, or sometimes at least you would have a listing of donors. So there's a whole lot more financial information, whereas an impact report, because of the scope of it, wouldn't necessarily require that full financial accounting for the year. So certainly pulling together all of that financial information is a lot of work. Anybody who has been in a development office that's tried to pull together a donor list or get audited financial information together in time for an annual report knows that takes a lot of work. So that might be a reason to think about doing an impact report over an annual report. But just one key differentiator to think about. So Holly, what's our kind of second differentiator?
Yeah, the big one, and Taryn sort of previewed this, is that impact reports and annual reports typically have different length and scope. That an impact report can be something that's much more narrowly focused and so therefore shorter, whereas impact reports really are a year in review. And because they have more content to cover, they tend to be longer documents. So impact reports, they might cover the year in entirety, or they might just focus on a particular campaign or a particular program of your organization or some particular event or experience that you really want to highlight. And so they're much more tightly and narrowly focused, whereas we expect annual reports to have a broader, more sort of comprehensive view of everything that's happened over the course of this year. And for that difference in length and scope, it leads us into our third key differentiator between the two, which I know, Taryn, you've got.
That's right. And the third thing is there's a difference in cost and in polish. So if you are producing an annual report that really seeks to report to people the, kind of the full accounting of the previous year, usually that's a much more in-depth document. Whether you're producing it in print or online, it's usually significantly longer in length and would be more costly to produce. It's also usually something you would engage like a designer to work on. There's staff costs, there's staff of time and resources that go into it. So an annual report is just a little more costly to produce. Again, whether it's a print version or a digital version, which we're seeing a lot of really good examples of these days. But again, if you're working with someone to help you to produce a digital annual report, there's going to be a lot of expense to that. So yeah, good differences in cost and polish, where an impact report can really be very homegrown. It could be something that you just create in Word or in PowerPoint or Canva or something like that. That is meant to look a little more like it's been produced by you as a development professional, not a graphic designer. So both are highly effective, but there is a huge difference in cost and in kind of in that polish end product. So, all right, Holly, we'll kind of recap us and our three differentiators between impact reports and annual reports.
Yeah. So as you are sitting down and thinking about what you want to produce this year, remember these three big differences between annual reports and impact reports. Number one, financials. Annual reports, it's the expectation that they are going to include financial information and a donor list. Impact reports, not so much. You can leave it out. Number two would be length and scope. Annual reports are going to be longer and more comprehensive in all the material that they cover, whereas impact reports can be much more narrowly and tightly focused on the content that they're discussing. Finally, number three is polish and cost. That annual reports typically are a more highly polished, more formal, and therefore more expensive document to produce, whereas impact reports can be homemade and done more on the quick and on the cheap. So there you have it. We hope some helpful differentiators as you sit down to think about how are we going to report back to our donors and what kind of asset are we going to use?
That's great. And I think, it's just important to remember that this reporting back to people should be fun and creative. It should really spark joy and excitement for your mission and the people who will be receiving it. So keep that in mind as you're doing this work. So thank you again for joining us today for Threading It Together. We really hope that you have found this video helpful. You'll notice on our YouTube channel that we have videos on this topic and others. And so we hope that you'll subscribe and continue to follow us. And of course, if we can ever be helpful to you as you think through any fundraising challenges that you might be facing or just need a thought partner on something, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can find our contact information on the Thread Strategies website. So thank you so much and happy fundraising.